Welcome back. A couple of days ago, two women enjoying a sunny day on the Florida beach in Walton County were told by the sheriff's department to pick up their things and leave. The video is on Facebook. What were they doing? Drinking, disturbing the peace? What? Nothing. They were, however, in violation of a brand new state law that even some police say is downright confusing. While the Florida courts have ruled the owners of beachfront property can't restrict public access to the beach, this new state law changes the process local governments need to go through to ensure public access. Confusing, you think? What impact, if any, will it have, after all, on the beaches here, which are the best beaches anywhere? Joining us for more are Kevin Cooper, the president of the Greater Sarasota Chamber of Commerce, and Andrew Conboy, a real estate attorney at Berlin, Patton, and Ebling. And welcome to you both. And Andrew, we invited you here today because you have written about this and how confusing it is to folks in your line of work and local towns and law enforcement. So where does it stand, at least around here, in terms of the possibility that people could go out to the beach one day and be told to leave?
I think the short answer is we don't fully really know yet. The police department and the sheriff's department are really going to have to develop their own policies on exactly how they treat that situation when a private landowner says, hey, there's somebody on my land, I'd like you to do something about it. So the policies are not really set in place yet, and we don't really know exactly how that's going to go.
Explain, if you can, in layperson's terms, what this law does as opposed to what the law was up until now.
Well, there's two really big changes. The first big change is how the local municipalities establish a private beach for public use. Customarily, they would enact an ordinance saying, this is private land, but the public has customarily used this land as public land, so the public can use that land. Now, that just enacting an ordinance is not the process anymore. There needs to be notice of public hearings. The municipalities need to hold public hearings, and they ultimately need to have a circuit court declare that as it's still private land, but the public can use it.
Quick question, Kevin. Do you have concerns, either if you're owner of beach property or concerned about tourism, how this might affect our area?
Yeah, at the outset, of course, from a business perspective, you'd be opposed to any bill that would restrict public access to beachfront property. But I think here in Sarasota County, my concern is minimal. I mean, there's a big difference between possibility and probability. Is there a possibility this could prohibit public access to beachfront? Yeah. Is there a probability? Not really. It's very low here in Sarasota County when you have the erosion control line and public beach access that we already have established here. The likelihood is very minimal.
We shall see. Our conversation on private beach property continues. Welcome back. We're talking about the new state law that may well block public access to our best beaches. And joining us for more are Kevin Cooper, president of the Greater Sarasota Chamber of Commerce, and Andrew Conboy, a real estate attorney at Berlin, Patton, and Ebling. And Kevin, I would imagine this cuts both ways. It could affect tourism and people coming to our beaches where they may not be welcome in all parts of the beach, but also the real estate market where people may or may not think that they're buying private, beachfront property.
Yeah, I think it depends maybe on how it's advertised, but I think it also goes back to really the Florida Supreme Court's steadfast ruling in customary use. And what we know is that what it has held is that the beaches in the state of Florida are some of the oldest and most readily available public uses in the world. As long as people have roamed the public realm in the state of Florida, they have roamed the public beaches. And what the Florida State Supreme Court has held is that these beaches are public, regardless of whether you have a private property right and there's a line there. It doesn't really matter, and this doesn't change any of that.
But Andrew, we also know what human behavior is, and a lot of people, or at least some people, will take advantage of everything they can and put up those signs that say private beach, which may or may not be the case.
Yeah, and that's the danger. We were discussing a little earlier, the danger of the local real estate market. You're going to see people advertising, hey, I'm selling this house with a secluded private beach, when that might not necessarily be the case, or they might actually think that that is the case. So it is going to be a big change in the local real estate market. Agents are going to want to look out for that they're not falsely advertising what their property is, one, and two, that their customers are not thinking that they're buying something that they're really not.
Do you expect that this could result in a lot of new litigation?
I would think that it probably would. One, from the municipality trying to establish private lands or private beaches as this customary public use land again. And I mentioned that the process that they're going to need to go through. And two, as I just mentioned, there's probably going to be some new litigation establishing beach rights for people who bought a property thinking they were getting one thing, and suddenly they're building a fence, and suddenly they figure out that they might not own that part of the fence.
We are just getting warmed up. Our conversation on private beach property will continue after a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are talking about a brand new state law that could give the owners of beachfront property the legal right to boot you right off the beach. And joining us for more are Kevin Cooper, president of the Greater Sarasota Chamber of Commerce, and Andrew Conaboy, a real estate attorney at Berlin, Patton, and Ebeling. And Andrew, you've researched this. How did this whole law get started? I mean, what was the motivation behind it?
It's really a law to protect personal property rights. It really started in Walton Beach, as you discussed. That's where a lot of this got started, and it's spread throughout the state. It passed by wide margins in the House and Senate, and it has not been received by great fanfare since it passed the House and Senate.
Well, here's the interesting part, because I looked up, the sponsors of this new law. The Senate sponsor is a Naples Republican, and the House sponsor is I believe, a Broward County Democrat. But the impetus was north in the Panhandle here, and you've already seen, if you read some of the stories about this, incidents popping up, whether it's in the Panhandle or Pinellas County or the Miami area. Has this always been a problem, or is this new stuff?
I think the stuff that you were just referring is new stuff, and I think it's going to take a little while for this all to shake out, how the different municipalities and counties deal with enforcing this new law. I think that's all going to be new, and we're all going to have to work this out. That's why one of my tips is for eager homeowners who want to go out and build something on their private beachfront property, who might feel emboldened. You might want to wait on that to see how this all shakes out. You might find yourself in a battle that you didn't originally want to get into.
Kevin?
Yeah, I think there's two things to what you're speaking to, and that it brought on in the bipartisan nature and the overwhelming popularity in the Senate and the House. And even here in Sarasota County, the 5 House representatives here, 2 Democrat, 3 Republican, all 5 voted for it. Senator Greg Stubbe voted for it. And so I think it's a general, going back to the point, it's a protection of private property rights. All it did was create a new process. It didn't change the law. It didn't really do anything about customary use doctrine. All it said was, hey, if a local government wants to establish customary use on private property, beachfront property, it now has a process where it has to notify the property owner, which it didn't have to do before, and it has to establish that in court, which it didn't have to do before. It could just unilaterally do it. So it just establishes a new process, which is a little more onerous on the private government or on the public government in any municipality or county across the state, but it doesn't embolden anything that would take away private or public access to the beachfront property.
Yeah, 2 other points I wanted to make to piggyback off that. It also establishes a new process for private homeowners to streamline the ejectment process, so they don't have to go through the long, drawn-out lawsuit. They don't have to provide notice to trespassers or people who they think are trespassers. It's a summary procedure. It's much more streamlined. And my second point is, I want the communities to know that we're not talking about the entire beach. From the high mean water line, that's really, in layman's terms, if the water looks wet, from there on down, the state owns that, or the public owns it, the state owns it, holds it in a trust. So that's never going to go away. It's constitutionally protected.
But let me put this both to you. A lot of people who live around here are from other parts of the country. They're from the Northeast. I remember I used to have relatives who lived in New Jersey, and in order to go to the local beach, you had to have a medallion showing that you were a resident there. One of the great things about coming down to Florida is you could go to any beach you want. They hear this, and some people might not be that happy about it, Kevin.
Well, I think they may not, but there's a lot of things that don't change. And when you look at Siesta Public Beach here in Sarasota County, that is owned by the county. When you look at Lido Beach, that is owned by the local government. So there's plenty of beachfront property here that is simply owned by the public in perpetuity, that is protected. And then you go up to places like Longboat Key where they have the erosion control line. Any properties that have been beneficiaries of erosion of benefit in terms of renourishing the sand project, that creates more public land on there. So we have so much beachfront property here in Sarasota County that simply is not affected. Now, is the nuance of that easily communicable to the United States of America, the average tourist public? Probably not, but really it doesn't change any for the experience. In my opinion, for Sarasota County at least, the marketability of Siesta Key, the marketability of Lido Beach, the marketability of Venice is so high that I don't think you're going to see a big change.
Right, but I would imagine that what people would be concerned about is this video that is kind of circulating on the internet now of what happened up in Walton County, where you have sheriff deputies going up to women on the beach telling them to get out.
Yeah, and that's not very good for the public image of Walton. And I think that this is kind of ground zero for a lot of this discussion. It goes back to a United States Supreme Court decision back in 2010. It goes back to one of the more recent federal court decisions, I think last year in 2017. So Walton is kind of ground zero for a lot of this stuff. I don't see a lot of that coming down to Sarasota County. I don't see Sheriff Tom Knight or Bernadette DePino, chief of the City of Sarasota Police, kind of directing their police in that way. But Walton is kind of an interesting kind of ground zero for a lot of this discussion, where I think this bill kind of emanated from.
Andrew, what would you tell people in terms of advice, if they are in a situation where they're on the beach, they're minding their own business, they just wanted to walk out to someplace that seems to be a little bit less busy, and somebody tells them to get out and threatens to call the police?
I think this is a pretty simple piece of advice. Move down the beach a little bit to where the water looks a little more wet, a little closer to the water, and then they really have no argument because it cannot be privately owned, and that's something I think the public should take away from this conversation. From the mean high water mark where it looks wet, that's always going to be public. It can never be privately owned. So if you're being asked to move, you should probably just move a little closer down the water and avoid any sort of confrontation as much as you possibly can.
And I think in a general instance, many people don't need to be concerned. I think, unfortunately, what we know from a lot of the stuff that has arisen in Walton is that these come from bad actors. So it's people that are being loud, they're breaking noise ordinance, they are drinking to excess, they are actually encroaching on people's interior property behind maybe a fence. This is coming from a reasonable private property owner's concern about people that are acting in a way that is really not compatible with residential use. This isn't about someone jogging by a property or having a coffee enjoying the sunset and really just being quiet and compatible. This is about people who have gone beyond normal social decorum and caused issues for property owners.
But it's not just a situation of, okay, it seems like Walton is is some kind of strange place going up there, but you know, we have stories that point out the same thing happening just up the road from here in Pinellas County, Clearwater Beach, and down in South Florida in Broward County. So I mean, it is happening from place to place.
Well, I think anywhere where you have a private property owner who is really steadfast towards private property rights, when you look at the plat, you are going to see that that person owns part of the dry sand above the mean high water line. They purchased that land, they pay property taxes on that land, and that's where I think the intent of this bill that passed is kind of sound, that says, hey, you do have private property rights to a degree, and now we're going to institute a process whereby if local governments wish to establish the fact that there is customary use on that private property, that you will be notified and that there will be a judicial consent to what is happening there, rather than the unilateral control that local governments used to hold.
All right, we have to take a quick break and we'll be back for final thoughts in a moment, so stay with us. And our guests join us right now for final thoughts. So Andrew, what is your biggest concern in terms of, as this law gets rolled out, and both sides, whether you're a homeowner or you're a visitor, you may not even be aware of it?
Well, two things. One, coming from a real estate standpoint, my advice would be, do not go out and purchase a home thinking that, oh, it's on the beach, it must have private beach access. That might not be the point. It might not be the case. Not every beachfront property necessarily has beach property right on the beach. And two, the biggest point I want to get across is it's in the Constitution that the beach from the high water mark on down, basically anything that the tide touches. It's never going to change, it's never going to be private. So there's nothing to worry about there. And I want the tourists to know that they can always access our
Do you
beaches.
expect that we're going to see cases where property owners are going to try to take advantage?
I have no doubt about that we're going to see some of those stories that you were mentioning from other places in the state. It's just going to take some time to figure out exactly what you can and can't do, and we'll probably see some of those stories.
And Kevin, I know people are going to come here no matter what, but are you concerned that you're going to have people visiting our area and getting hassled on the beach where they're just trying to chill out?
I think two things. One, I think they probably already have been in pockets, and I think they will continue to be perhaps in pockets. I don't think there's going to be a real mass issue along with people contending with public use on the beachfront property. Again, unless it crosses into the realm that crosses social norms, where it's just, hey, these people are loud, they're drunken, they're leaving trash, they're doing things that are really unacceptable. Most people that have beachfront property are pretty welcome and acceptable to people accessing that. And again, nothing creates a distortion to the Florida State Supreme Court. This will hold true. We will long since, from now and forever forward, have access to public beaches.
And we'll have to leave it there. Thank you. But before we go, we want to share with you what some of viewers had to say about Friday's show on The Week in Washington. Thursday evening, President Trump was speaking at a rally in Montana and took some shots at Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren, as well as the Me Too movement. Trump has previously called the Massachusetts Senator Pocahontas, and now he is wanting her to prove her Native American heritage, stating that he would approach her carefully since we are in the Me Too era, and have her take a DNA test. And if the test comes back proving her Native American heritage, he will donate $1 million to a charity of her choosing. We went to Facebook for your thoughts, and Edwin says, no big deal. News trying to make a big deal. I thought everything he said in Montana was true and funny. Ian says, why does he need to hold rallies? Is it an ego boost? How much does it cost taxpayers? Shouldn't he be working? And Brenda says he makes fun of someone's heritage, which she has explained a gazillion times, and he belittles the Me Too movement, yet the Trumpers are just fine with it. Amazing the sick things people are okay with now. There is no hope. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation on tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/mysuncoast.com.abc7. We want to thank our guests for being here tonight. Kevin Cooper is the president of the Sarasota Chamber of Commerce, and Andrew Conaboy is a real estate attorney at Berlin, Patton, Ebling.